Okay, wonderful. Well, thank you all so much for joining me tonight. As Jenny mentioned, my presentation for today is ethics scenario. So we will be going over an ethical scenario, and it'll be on the financial concerns or the billing part of ethics. And so I'm going to start us off with um, the learning objectives for today. So I'm going to provide you all with a small overview of ethics and what it is. We're going to do another quick little overview of the ethics standards. And then we're going to talk about ABA and billing and why it's important to kind of be in compliance with billing. And then I'm going to have the case presentation, and we're going to have a little discussion on this case presentation. So I'm not really gonna dig in too much on this slide, but again, the ethics code is something that as behavior analysts or future behavior analysts, we must abide to, and we must be in compliance. It's our ethical code. As a professional, we want to ensure that we're doing the right thing, that we are being good professionals, and it's just important for us to always keep it in mind as we navigate this ABA world. Again, our ethics standards, as we know, the code of ethics includes responsibility as a professional, responsibility in practice, responsibility to clients and stakeholders, responsibility to supervisees and trainees, responsibility in public statements, and responsibility in research. For tonight, we're going to be focusing on code of ethics in the sections 2, which is responsibility in practice, a little bit of 3, which is responsibility to clients and stakeholders. We discussed the 7 ethical issues that are more involved with ABA. Last time during our last training, we touched on self-care concerns. There is also friendships with clients or families, inappropriate parenting, financial concerns, ethical concerns with employer, ethical considerations regarding research, and complicated decision-making. This time, or for this observation, we're going to be focusing on financial concerns and ethical concerns with our employer. For our SAR number 1, what is one financial concern or ethical issue that you have encountered with billing in ABA? And this is just an open floor. So if anybody has something that they would like to share and open this floor for discussion, that would be appreciated.
Yeah, I'll share a quick one. I started working for a new company where somebody else was putting in our schedules, and I noticed that I was scheduled to be supervising behavior technicians while I was out of the room at lunch break. And so I was like, no, I don't think that's okay.
Yeah, that's a huge one. Yeah, thank you for sharing. Krista, have you encountered anything?
Not like specifically, just because like I don't work in a clinical setting. My supervisor is Jenny and she is great at scheduling. But I do know that like financially, like with insurance companies, I've seen a lot like here recently and have been doing some research about like the age in which insurance companies deem kids no longer necessary to receive ABA services. And so I'm finding that very interesting. Just because like they don't want to cover it anymore because it can be expensive and is expensive, but like what they deem as appropriate is what I find more interesting. So, and find some ethical issues with.
Yeah, I've seen that a lot. That's a huge one. Okay, thank you, Krista, for sharing. Let's go ahead and dig into our topic. So financial concerns. So as you two mentioned, those are 2 great examples of some of the issues or concerns or ethical concerns with billing or the financial portion. One of them that I came across that is a huge one while reading and doing some research is charging appropriate fees for their service. So a lot of BCBAs don't really know how much their service is worth, and especially new BCBAs. And so when they have clients or when they start their business, maybe the parents or the, client may find that that fee is inappropriate. So that's where there is ethical concerns about, well, it's too expensive or it's too cheap, or what is the right fee for my service. So that's one that I came across. Some things that, BCBAs can do to help alleviate some of those concerns is always standing up for yourself, learning to say no, and then following up with billing. If you are running your own organization and you have clients that, are not keeping up with the billing or with the payments, you need to follow up. Also for BCBAs that are starting their own business, or for a BCBA, again, that just became certified, it can be very helpful to hire someone that handles the billing portion, so that the BCBA only is only dealing with the direct service and the direct patient care. That way, the billing person or the people in the admin office, they deal with the, medical billing codes, the technology portion. But it's also important to let them know that we do have to abide to a code of ethics, and keeping them also informed with our ethical codes would be very helpful in order for billing to also align, and so that everyone is in compliance. And then if BCBAs are unsure of their fees, or if they have questions, it's always a good idea to ask other BCBAs and colleagues to see, hey, what are your thoughts on fees? Or, I mean, I wouldn't necessarily ask them directly, how much are you charging for your fees? But I would, kind of try to see if they'd be able to share. But in general, it would just be, asking for support, collaborating with other colleagues to for your best interest. And so this is just one of the financial concerns that I came across. Ethical concerns with employer. So although most people who start an ABA therapy business have their hearts in the right place, we're very compassionate. Most of us are in this field because we want to help kids. We want to help families. We love, those interactions with our families. And again, we just want to, make our kids successful and do the right things for them and help them in every way. But it's very easy to get sidelined by regulations, overhead cost, and the competitive market. And so when it comes to the competitive market, we all know that the ABA business is growing. And with that said, there's going to be competition. There's going to be more of like just competition in general. And so what ends up happening is that small companies find themselves cutting corners, and then large corporations or large organizations may be more concerned with actually the profit of, getting more money or making more money than actually helping clients. So entry-level ABA professionals may not have the confidence to stand up to a boss or raise ethical concerns in the workplace. I've seen this a lot personally in my experience when I used to work as an RBT. We started as a very small, organization. It was just, I want to say, myself as a behavior specialist, and then we started hiring 2 or 3 more just here in this Monterey County area. But because the company became very successful, they started hiring a lot of, specialists, RBTs, supervisors. And it got to the point where it was not just only here in Salinas, but they actually opened many offices in Morgan Hill, San Jose. So they expanded to, like, I want to say 6 offices very quickly. I want to say within 2 years, this probably happened. So they started, hiring BCBAs, hiring a lot of people. And then a lot of ethical concerns with billing happened, a lot of ethical concerns with boundaries with staff. A lot of, ethical concerns happen with relationships. So this is just one example where the larger businesses really sometimes just go more with the profit, and then the smaller, businesses are more of like really, that caring for the people. Yeah, because their fees are a little bit higher. Some insurances or some, clients won't go to the smaller businesses because of that. So why should ABA agencies ensure that ethical billing practices are aligning or that we're in compliance? So the number one, we should abide by state and federal regulations. We need to make sure that, we follow these regulations, because if we don't do this, our businesses get shut down. If there's obviously we have a business license. Once there's a business, there has to be a license. So if there's audits, and if in the audit there's findings, obviously those licenses will be removed. So it's really important that we are in compliance with state and federal regulations. I know, Krista, you're in a different state. I know that Jenny and I are in California. So just being really informed about our individual states and what the regulations are would be really helpful. A lot of things that also happen is billing misunderstandings. Sometimes it's really not that companies or organizations are billing inappropriately. Sometimes it's that the claims are not matching because it's not documented correctly. So again, it's very important that when we are documenting with our clients, that our notes are matching up. If we saw the client at a specific location, we have to include the location. And then again, the claim must match with the billing portion. And so again, sometimes some companies don't do it on purpose. I know some do, because we've seen it a lot too, where they are billing inappropriately. But billing misunderstandings do tend to occur. So just keeping that in mind. And then the other thing is that improper practices lead to overall financial losses, both for patients and organizations, which also decrease healthcare and provide ineffective patient care. So obviously, if a company is, having all these billing or financial concerns, then we start losing patients. Not only do we start losing money, but our patients are not receiving effective care. And so we are in this field for a reason. We are in the field to, again, support our families, our clients, and to make sure that they receive effective treatment. And so if we start handling, billing or doing billing incorrectly, then we will have a decline in patients and ineffective treatment. So the consequences of improper ABA billing practices. So I kind of already touched on audits. So there is audits that we can have as or that we have, again, state and federal. Something that we can do to support us is doing internal audits. So if we do have a small company, or if you're running a business on your own, or if you're working solo, it's really important to do audits, internal audits, so that you are prepared for a good audit or a mandatory audit, which would be by the state or by the board. Another thing is overpayment recovery. So obviously when we are, billing incorrectly, and we're either missing charges or we're adding, more charges than we should, and there's audits, obviously, they're going to ask us to return that money. They're going to terminate our licenses. So in the end, it'll just be a loss of money. It'll just be money that it'll be very hard to recover. And again, financially for the organization, for the BCBA, it's a loss. So it's something that we should be careful about. And then the other thing is provider termination. So because of the audits and because, you know, maybe removing licenses or failed audits, we can get a termination. And what that means is that the state or the board or the insurances will actually tell you that you cannot, that they'll not work with you and they won't pay you. So this is called a provider termination. And that's something that, you know, we don't want to happen. That's something that we should avoid at all costs. But it is something that does happen very frequently with companies or with BCBAs that are billing incorrectly. What should an ABA agency do to prevent improper billing? One of the things that they can do is remain updated with the state and federal regulations. I've mentioned that several times. So just ensuring that if you have a team helping you with the admin portion of your company or your organization, just have them really knowledgeable on the state and federal regulations. And again, the code of ethics in ABA remain in compliance. I know that a lot of HR admin or admin people are not really aware of the code of ethics in ABA, but it's really important that because we have to abide to this code of ethics, that they do become aware of what we should be taking care of in the code of ethics, what we should be in compliance. And so my recommendation in this for this would be to really just ensure that if, you know, your HR or your admin people are aware of our code of ethics, and they don't have to, you know it like we do, but just it would just be really helpful for all of the people in the organization being in the same page. And without further ado, our case presentation for tonight is I recently became a certified as a BCBA and started a job at a new private organization. I have been with this organization for over 6 months. It was brought to my attention by one of my coworkers that the agency is billing under my name for a behavioral service that I have not provided to my clients, which is personal care attendant services. Can this type of billing be justified with my role as a BCBA? Who should I report this to? And I am afraid I lose my new job if I report this. So this is the case presentation, and now open for discussion. Which sections of the ethic codes address this scenario? What do you think? And I don't have the code of ethics, but I have this here. Responsibility as a professional, responsibility in practice. What are your thoughts?
Go ahead, Krista.
So I would say for sure responsibility as a professional, responsibility in practice, and then responsibility to clients and stakeholders. And then like specifically like being truthful, maintaining competence, self-reporting critical information, accuracy in service and billing reporting.
Yeah, that's correct. Jenny, would you like to add anything?
I'm on mute. Am I on mute?
No, we can hear you.
I'm like, where's the little mute button? It's not red. It's like, no, it's because you can hear me. I think those were a lot of things. Where is it that even talks about like the charging the right fees? So not only do we not overcharge, but I think we also don't undercharge or simply charge a wrong fee.
Right. I can go here. So
I think
ethic
the
code
only
section. Go ahead.
well, so in is it 3.11? So responsibility to clients and stakeholders. One of them is documenting your professional activity. And so I think that ties into it as well.
Right.
Yeah.
Are we matching the things? I'm thinking even just financial agreements and service
Mhm.
agreements, right? Do I have the right agreement that says I'm supposed to be billing for personal care, or I'm supposed to be billing for, I don't know what the other options are.
Right. Yeah, there's so many concerns here.
Mhm.
So, the first one obviously is that the agency is billing for a service that she did not provide. So, like you said, Krista, being truthful to the services that you're providing, documenting the service, and then this one here too. So, can this be reported? Definitely. This needs to be reported, and we are also talking about retaliation. And I'm afraid to lose my new job if I report this.
Right.
So if you guys don't have anything to add, I'll jump into what I said.
Yes.
Perfect. So besides all the wonderful things that you guys shared, I also said 2.06 accuracy in service billing and reporting. So behavior analysts identify their service accurately and include all the required information on reports, bills, invoices, requests for reimbursements, and receipts. They do not implement or bill non-behavioral services under an authorization or contract for behavioral services. If inaccuracies in reporting or billing are discovered, they inform all relevant parties, such as organizations, boards, funders, and they correct an inaccuracy in a timely manner and document all actions taken in the circumstances and the eventual outcomes. So definitely we all covered this in the 2.06. It's important for this person to document what's going on and to report. This BCBA should not stay quiet. She should definitely report what's going on. I also said 2.07, which is fees. Behavior analysts implement fee practices and share fee information in compliance with applicable laws and regulations. They do not misrepresent their fees. In situations where behavior analysts are not directly responsible for fees, they must communicate these requirements to the responsible party and take steps to resolve any accuracy or conflict. Again, they document all actions taken in this circumstance and the eventual outcomes.
Mhm.
And then service agreement. So before implementing services, behavior analysts ensure that there is a signed service agreement with the client or relevant stakeholders outlining their responsibilities for all parties, the scope of behavioral services to be provided, and the behavior analyst obligation under the code and procedures for submitting complaints about behavior analyst professional practices to relevant entitles. They update the service agreement as needed or required by relevant parties. They update service agreements must be reviewed with and signed by the client or relevant stakeholders.
Hmm.
And then the last one, 3.5, financial agreement. Before beginning services, behavior analysts document agreed upon compensation and billing practices with their clients, relevant stakeholders, and funders. So in this situation, I would try to sit down with, and I don't know if it's something that, you, Jenny, as a BCBA do, but I don't know if it would be possible to, sit down with the director or supervisor and help you understand, where this billing situation is coming from. Because in the scenario, we also have to understand that someone from the organization told this BCBA, that this was happening, but is it really true? So I don't know if that's something that, you've done or that can be done, but definitely reaching out to the supervisor and just kind of asking, for clarification, like, hey, help me understand how you guys bill for my services.
Right. Yeah, I think that's really critical. Because like you've said throughout this, there are so many different moving parts and pieces, different people trained to do different things, and not all of us understand all of the parts equally well. And so you can come in yelling and screaming and you're billing fraud and I'm going to RICO act you or, whatever. I have no idea. And, light all these fires Or you can come in, like you said, and say, hey, it's come to my attention that this service is being billed and I don't really understand how I'm supposed to be documenting that. Can you explain it to me so that I make sure my notes are really addressing the services that I'm supposed to be providing? And they might go, oh gosh, that's wrong. That's not your service. That's somebody else's. Let me show you on the bill how we're billing Joe because you're his supervisor and Joe's providing personal attendant, right? But we don't understand that everybody whose code falls under my supervisor code gets billed under Jenny, right? Because I can't bill a personal attendant, but I bill that Jenny's supervising that person. I'm kind of making up that scenario, so don't take that as gospel truth. But I know that things like that do happen, and it can be different for every insurance that you work with.
Mhm.
And so this is why we talk about in the soft skills of the week, things that we do. How do you use the passive voice? How do you receive feedback that you don't like, and what do you do about it? How do you ask for clarification or more information on something that you don't fully know the full picture of, and not just come in guns a-blazing?
Mhm. Yeah, thank you for that, Jenny. And the last ASR for tonight is, what steps would you take in this scenario? So if you guys can quickly share what your take would be on this scenario. And I can go back
So
to the
I
scenario.
would probably start by reaching out to the person that gave me that information, and kind of maybe back trail to figure out where it came from, because you did make a very valid point that, like, what if that information isn't truthful? But then from there, I would probably go to whoever does the billing and find out, like Jenny was saying, just because like we're under her, then they bill for her, though we provide services and those kind of things. And that's something that I don't have any knowledge of at this given time. But I think if I found out that it was an error in billing, they were doing it intentionally, well, obviously I would report it and I would probably leave the job. And I know that, like, in this case, the person is like, I'm afraid to lose my new job. But my mindset is kind of like, why would I want to work for somebody that would do something that's corrupt
Mhm.
or unethical or just wrong? Like, I mean, like, that it's wrong and you shouldn't be doing it. And do I really want to work and be represented by a company and through a company that intentionally is doing something like that?
Yeah, it's their loss, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Krista, for sharing. How about you, Jenny?
I think exactly the same. I think Krista nailed it.
Perfect. Yeah, I totally agree with you. And then to add, the BCBA, on my point of view, the BCBA should report the issue to her immediate supervisor. Like I said, this might be something that's not true. This might be something that hasn't been confirmed. And if it is confirmed, and if they continue to neglect the fraudulent billing, then the BCBA should report the agency for unethical billing. If it's something that is not concerned, then we go back to the misunderstanding that I was talking about previously. And like Jenny mentioned also previously, and maybe it's not that it's, fraudulent billing. It's maybe that it's just a misunderstanding. Something happened and the person, the HR admin, they're doing something unintentionally, because it can happen. So just really helping me understand where this information is coming from, reaching out to my direct supervisor, and then having that, confirmation or not confirmation about this situation. I would also not be afraid to report, and I would also not fear for retaliation. I think that, as you mentioned, Krista, as a BCBA, or I want to make sure that I'm honest. I want to make sure that I'm working for honest people. And if that's not the case, then I'm in the wrong company. And so as BCBAs, we just need to ensure that we're billing for behavioral services that we are providing, and that we stay within the regulations, within the laws, and we follow our code of ethics. And with that, I am done with the presentation for tonight. Here are my resources. Is there any questions.
Do you know if there is whistleblower protection for
Ooh, that's good.
fraud?
I
Claim?
read, I did read information on the whistleblower. I don't want to say yes or no. I would have to read more about it to answer that question, but that is a really interesting topic for another presentation, the whistleblower.
Yeah.
Right? Um, and I know I sat through a presentation once on ethics of billing and fraud and all sorts of stuff. And when I went and worked for this big company out in DC, we had to do all of these trainings on all of the different things that affect fraud in billing and ethics of billing. And my brain was just like so toast. But another thing that I see, because I'm not a service provider as far as like billing insurance. So there's a lot about that I don't understand the current environment of. I did ABA services and billing, gosh, 10 years ago in a small town through Medicaid only or through state funding only. And it was very clear what we couldn't bill for. You had one code, you did it or you didn't. And I was like, oh, this makes my job really easy, right? So this thing now where we have 12 different codes that we can pick from all gets really difficult. And I see people in Facebook groups ask the question of how do I negotiate my contract so I can make better rates? What are you billing? And the other people say, well, we can't tell you because our contract says that we won't disclose our rates. And if we look like we're colluding, if that's the word, like if we're all trying to agree that we're going to only take $300 an hour and nobody will take less than that, then it's RICO Act or something like that. I don't even know what that stands for or what it means, but there's a lot to understand beyond simply those 7 to 14 codes that you can bill when it comes to insurance and contracts and billing. This was a great intro presentation that makes my brain go, ouch.
Yeah, I'm familiar because I do work obviously at the hospital and clinic. So I know that now with billing, there's also different modifiers. So we have the CPT codes, and then there's modifiers that are added into all these services. So it gets even more complicated. So yeah, it can be difficult.
Yes. Well, I thought this was fantastic. Thank you. Who do you report billing fraud to? So like in your scenario, let's just say they walked it up the chain maybe, and they went to their supervisor and went with the supervisor to the billing people, the HR, whoever the department is. And they're like, no, we are convinced that this is what our contract says and that we can bill this for your services. And you say, well, can I see that contract? Because I'm really not understanding. And they say, no, that's not how we do it here. That's confidential proprietary information. And you're thinking, red flag, run away, right? And so you think that there's some legit fraud happening. Who's the first person you call?
I would say that
Ghostbusters.
The Ghostbusters, right? The fraud.
I'm sorry.
So I don't know because
Total setup, Krista.
I did some research, and what came across for me was the Agency for Healthcare Administration. I don't know if that's, I saw this in Florida. I don't know if that is for all states. But I would say something like that, or even to the funder. So like the Medi-Cal or I don't know, whoever the rendering agency is for these services. I would say I would start there.
That might be another good follow-up. I know when it comes to like if you have an insurance claim on your roof and your insurer's not doing the right thing, there's an insurance governing body for, I think, the state. And so I'm wondering if the medical insurance has that same kind of a thing where you could go to the state that licenses all of these providers to provide their insurance in our state and file something with them, a claim. That might be a good follow-up because
okay.
I would have no idea.
Okay, yeah. I can do that.
So I think really the only question that I kind of got from the presentation, and it wasn't anything that you said or didn't say. It was just something that kind of like popped in my head as you were discussing, is like an option to be an independent contractor better than working for a company or a school district for this reason exactly. Like, you are in control of all the things that you do, and you make your own scheduling, you do your own billing, you do so. But then, like, what's the flip side of that? Somebody who's an independent contractor
Spends their
Yeah.
life doing billing and contracting and credentialing.
Yeah. Mhm.
So that was kind of I didn't really have like a
Okay.
suggestion or anything other than like this might be an area to look up. Um, but like I also think like the cost thing was kind of interesting, and like that you can't disclose your cost. Because like I know just in my grad school class when we were discussing like if you had supervisors, and people were like, "Oh yeah, I have a supervisor I pay." And then all these other people are like, "You have to pay for your supervisor?" And I'm like, "Uh-huh." And some of them are upwards of $250 an hour. And these people in my class thought I was nuts. And I was like, "No, like there are BCBAs who say that an hour of their time for your supervision for their supervision to you is worth $250."
Mhm.
But I
And
get paid if I were
I
working with a
mean,
client. Aren't you a client? Shouldn't I get paid the same?
yes, you should. I'm not saying you are not worth
Yeah.
$250. I
Not you,
appreciate,
Jenny, but the you general people. Yes,
Yeah.
you.
but in the world of like, I guess like the world of supervision, I see a little differently than like the world of like practicing, because as typically, I'm not going to say always, typically, most of the people that you're working with in a clinical setting have insurance, or you're accepting their insurance, and their insurance is paying whatever you charge or whatever. But like in a supervision setting, you're working with a bunch of college kids who work full time and don't make a lot of money because we're all in careers that, we're just extremely passionate about. But like on the flip side of that, like in the school setting of it, you may have to supervise people. You don't get to charge for that,
Mhm.
but you're also held completely liable for everything that happens in a bit, in an ARD, in a restraint, in anything that can go wrong. And so like I know that like the small districts that I've worked in, they don't compensate BCBAs the way that they should be compensated. But BCBAs who work as independent contractors in our district get paid 3 times that as somebody who's employed with the district.
Wow.
Mhm.
Yeah, this is a whole nother topic of conversation. There are just so many
Yeah.
rabbit trails. And I'll tell you one life philosophy that I have is that you don't pay somebody else to do it until you know how to do it yourself. And I can't tell you how many years I did my own taxes before I said, okay, I think I got this. I know what counts and doesn't count, what's deductible, what's not. Now I'm going to pay you and just send you all my stuff. Right? How many years I fought with doing my own bookkeeping in my own line items before I hired a credentialer and a biller, right? And in my first company, my biller was me. In my second company, my biller was my husband. My third company, now my biller is still me because I just bill you guys and that's kind of easy. But now I've got a bookkeeper who makes sure that everything, but I only pay people to do what I know how to do because I need to be able to catch those red flags. And I can do that as a small mom and pop business. This company that I was working for out in DC that had 600 employees, you can't do that. They have an office of 30 people who are doing all their billing, I am sure. So how do you make sure you're catching all the red flags on that? And that, that would be interesting. I have people calling me all the time saying, "Hey, can I do your ABA billing?" And I'm like, "I don't know. Can you bill somebody for more money than what I'm making?" And they're like, "Yeah, no, okay. I don't know what you're talking about." Um, but yeah, And I'm just going to throw one thing in, then I know it's almost time for us to go, because here's another side of the story. And I hear this and I don't know what to do with it, because Krista, I am so with you that if I thought my company that I was working for was like really doing fraud and unethical, and if this is so glaring, what else are they doing that maybe I can't see? And I'd want to get out of Dodge. Right now, yes, I would think about, well, what about my clients that I'm servicing? And I have an ethical responsibility to try and transition them as well as I can. So there's that. But then I've talked to some folks that live so remotely, some practitioners, and they're like, if I quit this job, I got to start driving 2 hours a day to go to work because they're the only company in this area. Or I signed a non-compete that said I wouldn't work because I was only going to work for them, or that I wouldn't start my own because of blah, blah, blah. And they're really feeling stuck. And so it's like, okay, well, how do we help or encourage to try and fix or to approach maybe the glaring fraud in a way that preserves my job and helps benefit the company? Or closes them down. I mean, just smash it and close them down, and then they can't hold the contract against me. Then there's just so many legalities that involve all of this stuff. But I feel for the people who say, well, I have to stay here. And I also feel for the people who say, well, just leave. Because I don't think either answer is always black and white and super simple.
Yeah.
It's not.
Yeah.
But good
mean,
thought. I know we spent a longer time on that than we usually do on our presentations, but that's ethics. And
There's
that's
so
why
much.
we have, exactly. That's why we have ethics codes, because it's not one line. It's not simply fees, right? It's not simply service agreement. It's never simply when it comes to ethics. But I worked at a company once where my mid-level supervisors would come to me all the time and say, they're so unethical, I'm reporting them. And I'm like, okay, so what now? You think I'm unethical because I'm working for this company? Let's sit down and just talk about it. And if it is, let's figure out what we need to do. And if it's not, let's figure out how we get our brain wrapped around how we make this better for everybody. And I never had to report anything, because once we stepped back and looked at things and got a full understanding of what was what and went through all these parts and pieces of the ethics code, there was usually a suggestion we could make or somebody that we could go to get more information, or let's try implementing this, or let's make sure on our level we're doing this, right? We do what we can do while we take it up the chain, because we don't want to quit our wonderful jobs. But this stuff is just fascinating. I love talking about it and having you guys think deeper dives into these things and really go from there. Did I stop recording? Nope.
yes.
No, I did not.